You got people that saying, it don't matter what you call yourself. They gonna do what they want to do anyway. You don't know law. They gonna do what they want to do anyway. But when you get jammed up, the first person you call is an attorney. So if they was gonna do what they was gonna do anyway, why would you call an attorney to your rescue? The lady of justice can't see the color of your skin because she got a blindfold on and she holding a damn scale in her hand with a sword in the other hand. Talking about some, we don't get justice because the color of our skin. How, goofball? She wear a blindfold, so she don't see your skin complexion. She hears the words that you say out your mouth, and she weighs it on the scale. So if your heart ain't right, and your words ain't right, and your mind ain't right, guess what? You getting justice with that sword. A little bit or a lot getting cut off. Albions, they got birth certificates, so they're slaves. Our people who got licenses and birth certificates are slaves, chattel property. They just don't put pressure on hybrid Europeans because that'll mess the game up. Anybody that says they're a U.S. citizen, you're saying you're a corporate slave that belongs to the United States corporation. You're human trafficking property.
Try and follow what I'm going to tell you. There are two kinds of law on the earth, as I've said. One is called civil law, which is the law of the land, and one is called maritime admiralty, which is called the law of water. The maritime admiralty is banking law, and the law on the maritime admiralty says that you, because you came out of your mother's water, are a maritime admiralty product. This is why the ship is sitting in its berth and is tied to the dock, and the captain has to give a certificate of manifest to the port authority because money is changing hands. This is why when you were born, you have to have a birth certificate. It's got to be signed by the dock, because that's where the ship is tied to, is the dock. So the dock signs your birth certificate.
Absolutely nothing is the way we think it is. Like, even when we speak, when we talking, we don't even know what we're really saying. But the definition of what things really are, just getting more to what things really mean, just mind-blowing on how much we just been tricked and bamboozled. The word license. A license is just a permission to do unlawful conduct. You have permission to do something illegal. Mortgage. But a mortgage is a pledge by the dead. Y'all, or some of us, or all of us, we have once referred to ourselves as a person. A person is a persona, an actor. English language is nothing but a spell, and they've used this spell on us very well. Even children, right? Yeah, when you think of children, you think of just a small child, right? That sounds innocent, don't it? Children. But do you know what children really means? A children is a ward of a state. It's a slave of a state. Every word we thought we knew what it meant is not what it meant. And I immediately stopped calling myself black, African American, Negro. You know what all those terms mean? Dead. You're already labeled dead anyway, so they can shoot you and they can kill you if they want to. You're already gone.
Sure. Did you know all mortgages in the United States are fraud? Every one of them. Every one is fraud. Did you know your mortgage was paid off? Your mortgage was paid off the moment you signed the mortgage application and they accepted it. You know who paid it off? You did. See, you're not a debtor, you're a creditor. You just don't know it. You don't know it. They want you to think you're a debtor and that you're indebted to them. Your signature paid off that loan immediately.
The gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Hollingsworth, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, good afternoon. I'm excited to be here with each of you. Before I get started on my questions, Mr. Moynihan, I wanted to let you know, Saruthi, raise your hand, Saruthi. She has been my team member for a couple of years now, but on Monday, she becomes a Bank of America team member, about which she is very, very excited. So I hope you'll take good care of her and know and recognize the talent that she has shown already in our office. I'm sure she'll do the same at Bank of America.
We will do that, and her father already works for us, so he'll take care of it.
You should have called us.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to chat about some of these issues today. What I'm really interested in is the state of the economy.
How are you floating your resume to big banks? I mean, you're supposed to be the ones, policing the big banks. I mean,
grow up, Jamie.
there must be some kind of law against working for a financial institution right after you've been working in financial regulation, right?
No. No.
Hey! Doggy!
Hey! Come over here! What are you doing at Caesars?
He's a Goldman. Yeah.
Her father already works for us, so he'll take care of it.
You should have called us.
I'm really imploring the people and all the peoples around the world, for God's sake, stop giving your democratically elected governments the benefit of the doubt. They are not deserving of that. They are not. Stop rationalizing whatever your government is doing. Stop rationalizing and come up with some good intentions. They have no good intentions. You cannot comply your way out of a tyranny. It is impossible. Trying to do so, you will only feed a gigantic alligator in the hopes of being eaten last. But guess what? Your turn will come, and then you will be the one swallowed up. I also have to ask the people, end your silence. Speak up. For God's sake, stop complying. Start rebelling. They're out to get you if you do not resist. In order to deal with this unfree world, to defy this unfree world, I have decided to become so absolutely free that my very existence is an act of rebellion.
The whole history of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, you know, in the colonies, the colonial elite looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote-unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people, right? So ultimately, the rich figure out they got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness, and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. No more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well, right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon, the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies. Rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown.